Welcome back, everybody, to my next video. I've been waiting to put this one up for you. I'm excited about it. What a challenge this project was. Sometimes I find painting analog using traditional media is just extremely difficult. And this was no exception, this project. So I've got I recorded most of the process of me painting this painting using acrylics on a canvas of Nynaeve, specifically Zoe Robbins as Nynaeve in the Wheel of Time. And I've sped it up here so you can kind of see the process go a little bit quicker than it actually took place. And the downside is a couple hiccups. My camera died one part way through one of my sittings, and I had some lighting issues. I don't have like a really great setup in terms of a studio for painting using acrylics, or like in a studio setting. That's part of the reason why I like to use digital, is just the convenience of everything. And I also, as often happens with my projects, I got to a spot in it where I recognized that I sort of botched it up. So I basically had to almost start from scratch and repaint everything. I often get too excited about stuff and I just blast through things, and then taking a step back, I look at it and I'm like, gee, it needs to be fixed. And I think you've probably seen in my social media, I put a post and I put some stuff on Patreon about how I was just feeling very frustrated throughout this process, just feeling, I guess sometimes in your creative career you hit some walls where you sort of recognize that your capacities just aren't what you wish they were, I guess. And I don't think this is like a super negative thing. It can become negative. For me, it can be kind of become like an obsession and a struggle personally for me when I start to feel that way. And I think I drive my family absolutely crazy because I sort of obsess about my shortcomings and my lack of capacity. And I often talk through out loud my frustrations. And I think it can become a little bit tiresome. So I need to grow in how I cope with that. And I kind of wanted to talk about that, about why as artists we get so frustrated. So I'm not going to talk a lot about my process with this painting throughout this video. I think watching it unfold on screen here is probably more informational than anything. If people have questions regarding the process, please feel free to drop them in the comments, and I'll get back to you about any specifics around technicality, the technical approach, the equipment, whatever. I'm happy to answer those questions. But I think for this process through the video, I think it'd be fruitful just to have a conversation about why, as artists, as creatives, we get so frustrated around our art. I think the first thing is that, and I noticed this jumping from, I'm a trained graphic designer as well as an artist, and I noticed that when I sort of tailored my career more away from graphic design and more focusing on illustration, it started to become a little bit more tiring and just draining on me physically and emotionally, mentally. It just seemed to take more of a toll on me in a physical sense, and I would find sitting at a computer and working on illustration work was more demanding of my personal resources than it was to work on graphic design. Graphic design, I felt, is something that I could easily be somebody else's hands to execute their vision, whereas I feel like illustration and painting, I'm always putting a little bit of myself into it. There's a little bit of an ownership there. I think that as artists, we can easily feel like we become our work a little bit, and our contentment and our stability hinges on the success of that work. Success is a whole different thing. What does success look like? We can have a conversation about that. For you, it might be a number of factors. I have my own sort of like measurements in my head about why things are or are not successful. One easy gauge is people's response and reaction to stuff. In this case, this is a commission, so this is a project that I worked on for a gentleman who paid me to make this painting. That comes with its own degree of difficulty and tension that ultimately translates into me being more stressed throughout the process than if I was just painting for myself. I find painting for myself just like a lot more freeing and less stressful. That's not to say I don't enjoy this. Okay, I just want to say quickly, so here you see the painting as it is. Like that was where my phone died, so I lost a chunk of time there. So this took quite a strong leap forward in terms of my process. So I apologize for that. But that was a chunk of video that got lost in the process. So for me, feedback is really important. But what I want to say is like, it can feel like we're our work. So our happiness, our level of contentment in our journey as a creator, as an artist, might feel like it's hinging on our work's success or failure. We start to become our work. But I just want to say, like, that's not who we are. We're not our work. Our work is a separate thing from us. We have to work really hard as artists to find our identity in things that are really meaningful and grounded. Our work is like something that, though it takes a lot out of us, and it does feel like it's something that that is part of us, I guess. And putting your work out there, I do understand that it feels like you're putting yourself out there, and I don't think that's unusual or abnormal. There is definitely a aspect of being an artist that is like putting yourself out in front of the wolves and, you know, hoping that people like it. There's a practical aspect to that too, in regards to figuring out how to meet the requirements of a project to fulfill your end of the bargain as an artist. So there is like meaningful. There is a meaningful purpose to objective feedback and constructive feedback on your work that can help you get to where you need to be, and that's not a bad thing. So you have to learn how to sort of absorb that and take that feedback and the critiques and the criticism around your work, because that will help you grow. And ultimately for me, that's one big important thing for me in regards to my art, is that I really need to feel like I'm growing. And if I don't feel like I'm growing, my level of contentment with it will shrink. It'll be less. But yeah, doing artwork, you know, every time you do a painting, and I guess this applies to a lot of other things in life, every time we create something or put ourselves out there in a way, we're risking failure. And so as an artist, we have to sort of temper that process and temper how the feedback and how our perception of the success of a project is going to affect us internally, so that our emotions don't get bundled up in a knot and we don't become depressed and anxiety ridden and even potentially pull back from creating altogether because of our perfectionistic tendencies, which is something that can happen. I spent long periods of time in my youth not creating anything because I felt if I couldn't create perfectly, then what was the point of creating? And I think that that's like a stumbling block that a lot of artists run into. So it's something to keep in mind. Another area of frustration for me, and perhaps for you as well, is time. Now, time is a very challenging one because that's something that we don't really have any direct control over. We can choose how we're spending our time to some degree. There's certain requirements of our time that are demands that we have to meet. Responsibilities like school, work, obligations to family and loved ones. Those are all important things, and they should be priority over top of, certain things like doing fan art or just enjoying my artistic journey, so to speak. Right? I need to gauge those things. I have responsibilities that I have to take care of. I gotta feed my family and provide. So I have to be working at my business, and I have to be putting in all the time that's required there to make sure things are running well. For me, this is a huge stressor. This is one of the biggest points, and I think with this piece, it's one of the biggest reasons why I felt such a depth of frustration throughout the process. The downside of creating stuff like this on the side. I mean, there's so many positives, and what I would say is like the one downside is that I don't have the freedom to really invest my time into it the way I would like to. So for instance, this is like a perfect project as an example. I felt a lot of pressure to get it completed because I needed to get it done for my client, but also I've got a bunch of other things on the go that I have to get to, and it was a bit of an overwhelming sense of immediacy that I had to really get this thing going. And so then there's a measure of stress that comes with that, because it's like I don't have the luxury of messing it up and making changes and going over it multiple times. Now, thankfully, my client, the person who commissioned this, is super gracious, and after I sent it to them, after the first finished draft, I sent it and I was like, hey, I'm done. And then I walked away and I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I just don't feel like this is working. There's things that are wrong with it, and it's just not accurate. It's not correct. It really bothered me. They really loved it where it was at, and I probably, some people maybe would have just let it be what it was. But I needed to, for my own creative journey, I wanted to change that, and he gave me the freedom to do that. He allowed me the time that I needed to be able to go back into it, make the changes that I felt necessary to get it to a spot where I felt like it was stronger, like it's more closer to likeness of the actor. It feels more like the character to me, and so that was great. I'm really grateful that they gave me the time. They gave me the time, so they didn't put the pressure on me from their perspective, but I didn't really have the time. So it's put other things back a little bit, right? And as an artist, that can translate into, thankfully I have a business that is providing for my family, but if I was an artist and I'm putting this project back a week, that can translate into less income over a certain window of time frame, right? Which as an artist can become challenging. So there's that pressure as an artist to complete things quickly so that you're able to make a good income and get through stuff quick enough to earn that money. So time is kind of like this stressor. It's a currency. Everything we do in life, we're trading our time for something, right? So in this case, I'm trading my time to create this piece. This pulls away from my family because this is outside of my regular work. This is extracurricular work. So this can pull away from time with my family. It can pull away from time of responsibilities that I have to do around my property, in my house. And that just creates a tension. There's like a tension there, an ongoing tension. And I think I've got a lot of thoughts about this from a philosophical perspective, about the relationship of time and how we spend it, and how it's so finite, right? Our time here is super finite. So this little video part here, this is where I'm just showing you like a transition. So this, what you're seeing now, I didn't record. This is, again, I had to kind of pull away, honestly, for a little bit of a window of time, because I needed to work without the stress of feeling like I had somebody watching over my shoulder. So I apologize because I don't have how I got from, version 1 to version 1A. But I did want to kind of include that little video right there, just showing kind of the transition of my piece over the photo, and the photo over my original piece, and just that transition, because I wanted to be able to sort of show you like how sort of not accurate it was, and then how I sort of pushed it. So this is a little ways after when I've kind of reworked stuff. So I'm sorry, again, I've kind of lost some of the footage in there, but hopefully you can you understand what's going on, and you're getting a picture of what I'm talking about with that. But yeah, for me, time is like a major stressor, and I think that there's like the finite nature of our lives and how short it is. It can feel a little bit overwhelming at times, and I think as a 44-year-old person, it feels even more that way, like I'm halfway through my life. But there's an important thing to remember with that. Some of the best artists, some of my like art parents, the people that I really admire, didn't really start excelling at their work or really, expanding their craft until they were around my age or even older. And so if I frame it that way, I feel a little bit better about where I'm at personally. And art is like, it's one of those things, they talk about the 10,000 hours, putting in the time to grow. Art is very much like that. It's a time in endeavor. You don't grow in it unless you're doing it. It's just like athletics. You don't get muscles unless you work out, and you feel that pain and you sweat and you do all those things, right? So art is just it's an interesting, challenging thing that we have to kind of be working at. I'm recording audio for my video.
You're recording.
Yeah. Time, right? Just like this, right? I'm trying to squeeze this video production in, and get interrupted, and then things go off the rails, and this is what happens, right? And I've only got a limited window of time in which I can do this, so you're seeing this in real time, this tension, right? But yeah, art is one of those things you just have to invest the time. And I'd always tell young artists, like when they're young, like when I was 13 or 14, I wish I'd have spent more time drawing, just straight up drawing, not really worrying about stuff, just drawing for fun, draw. Because like the more time you put in those stages, your brain's more malleable. You have a lot more expendable time. You're not like, juggling work and marriage and kids and all these different things. So I guess the encouragement point I want to give to you there is like, time's not running away. There is hope. Like, there's always hope to grow and become the artist that you want to become. You don't have to like do it right now. It can happen when you're in your 50s or whatever. But the point is you have to work at it. You got to put the time in to get there. It's not just going to magically appear. Success doesn't come that way, right? Success comes through work. So I hope that makes sense. I guess the other question that I find myself asking, and you should ask yourself in regards to this whole frustration piece, is what is the expectation that we have? So what's your expectations? What's the expectation that you've set for yourself around your artwork, around its reception, around its quality, around whatever aspect of it? Like, what are you thinking it's going to look like, or what do you expect for you to be able to accomplish? And then I guess like measure that, like be reasonable and reasonably think about, are my expectations realistic? Like this year I set out to do 100 portraits this year, and in the context of everything, and I've already shared this before, but in the context of everything, I'm not going to make that goal. It's a longer window of time, and that's okay. So I just need to recognize that it's going to take me longer, and instead of beating myself up about it and letting that self-defined expectation create turmoil inside me, just move on to the next step, right? Take it step by step and stage by stage, and move that needle forward as much as I can, as quick as I can. I heard someone say that the only standard of excellence that matters is your own standard of excellence. I think I saw that in Jake Parker's email. It was Sachs, S-A-C-H-S, forget their first name. They're like a filmmaker, artist person. That was like a quote from them. I'm sorry, I'll maybe find it and put a link in the description, but I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. The only standard of excellence that matters is your own. If that was the case, then artists would just get paid for doing what they think is good, right? Be like, I think this is great, so somebody's giving me money. Give me the money. Show me the money. But that's not how it works, right? There is like an economy out there, and I don't quite understand it all, but there is definitely an economy around art and an economy of perception, if I can say that, which is challenging to understand and interesting. I don't know. There's a lot to be said around that whole idea, and maybe that's a whole other video too. But I think as artists it's important to know that we are actually trying to fulfill someone else's expectations sometimes. Unless you're just creating for fun and for yourself, you're going to be trying to meet a standard that's been set. There's going to be some guidelines and stuff that you have to accomplish and meet. So I would say, in regards to the only standard of excellence that matters is your own, I would say not really. Not really. I think it's like if you have a high standard of excellence, you're going to be maybe achieve more. And if you have a low standard of excellence, you're going to achieve less, maybe, in terms of like the world's viewpoint. But then again, it's like, what are we aiming at, right? And I think success and meeting expectations is a whole other conversation where we need to set what is a reasonable level of success. What does success look like for me in this project or in my art journey as a whole? What does it look like? And I think sometimes as artists, we don't even start to have that conversation in our head. We just go moment by moment. And that can happen to me really easy. I get wrapped up in a piece of artwork and the struggle of it, and everything else doesn't matter. It's just that moment, the moment-to-moment struggle of the piece, which maybe is part of the reason why I love art, because I get lost in it. I get lost in the process. I get lost in that struggle and that sort of battle to bend stuff to what I want it to look like. Yeah, so I think that like all of these things that I mentioned, are contextual. I feel like it's contextual. So there's a context of your life, like what are the external pressures that you're facing, the realities that you're facing in your life. Maybe you're single and you've got to make the ends meet and pay bills, and your art just isn't doing it right now. So you've got to work another job, and then you're doing art on the side. Maybe you're in a relationship, and that's requires time because you care about it. It's really important for you. So those are going to pull away from your practice, right? And you have to frame your artwork inside of that context of whatever your life is looking like, and then start to parse out what does success look like in this context. For me personally, I know a couple things. Creating needs to be fun. So I have to, this stuff should be fun for me because it's like extracurricular. It's outside of my work. It takes time for my family and all that stuff. So it should be fun for me. It should make a little bit of money for my family. That's the criteria that I've set. I want to provide throughout the stuff that I'm doing. So I want it to be somewhat fruitful in that respect. I need to feel fulfilled through the process, and I think that comes through just the practice and the process. For me personally is where I find that fulfillment. As long as I'm not freaking out about stuff, I need to chill more and just enjoy the process, because I find when I get stressed I lose that joy in the process. But that's super important for me. It needs to be fulfilling personally, and I also want to feel like I'm growing. And so that's where there is a standard of excellence that I have to sort of look towards or try to aim at, which is external of my view. And for me, I really liked, I think it was Detour 303, I think, on YouTube, who was talking about art parents and finding art parents, so people that you really admire and respect for their artistic capacities. And I've kind of gone through that process of who I'm sort of taking influence from, and so those influences are helping me gauge the success or failure of my artwork. I'm starting to feel like I can see a little bit more about what is working and what isn't, and it's coming a little bit quicker instead of a long tail on that process. So that's been rewarding and fulfilling, and I'm seeing some growth there. So you can see here, I'm just going to go back to the painting for a little bit here. You can see that I've completely changed the hairstyle. So I started this piece before the trailer for the Wheel of Time TV show came out, and then the trailer dropped, and I recognized that the hairstyle and stuff for the character wasn't matching what was envisioned by the team at Amazon. So I thought, well, why not try to get something that's more in line with what they're doing with the character? And I think it looks really crazy that that is a braid. That braid that she has is intense. It's like really tight, almost like cornrow braids through her hair that all sort of like turn into this big, long, crazy braid. It's pretty epic. So I thought I would take a stab at trying to depict that. That was a real challenge because you can see in the background, maybe here, I had the trailer up and I was looking at different scenes in the trailer to try to wrap my head around what was going on there. Obviously, there's no photo reference per se of this angle of her hair as it is in the TV show. So just kind of inventing, I guess, my interpretation of what that would look like. But yeah, there was a lot of problems with this piece as I went through it, and I had to rework stuff. Somehow, like, I had the piece mapped out really well on the canvas at the start, and then somehow as I was working, I increased the scale of her features and her head. So she ended up, the first pass on it, her head looked huge compared to her shoulders. I had to fix all that, bring her shoulders out. I had to like just fix the structure of her face. Her chin was too narrow. She looked pretty and it looked kind of cool, but it just wasn't correct. And so I had to just go back and modify all that stuff. And just put in the extra time and effort to get it to where I'm want it to be. And I'm happy now. Like, it's not perfect, but I feel like it's a lot closer to what I envisioned and what I wanted. And sometimes you got to go through that process, and I think the key is to not let the frustration overtake you and stop you from growing and pushing. And that can happen to me, honestly. It can happen. I can get stuck under a pile of frustration and almost like shame of not being good enough. And that's probably a byproduct of my personality, as well as, expectations that I've set for myself. And then, like I've said, wrestling with the limitations and restraints around the time that I have to commit to this stuff. And I think, I don't want to say my expectations are crazy or whatever. I do want to be great. I really want to be great. I want to be really good at what I do. And so, there is going to be, with that desire to grow to a level that's exceptional, comes a certain level of self-imposed pressure and self-evaluation that has a risk of becoming unhealthy, maybe, or self-deprecating in a negative way. So it's a matter of managing that on my part, and I think on your part as an artist as well. What are you aiming at? What's your expectations? And are they realistic? My expectations, like I said, 100 portraits in a year wasn't realistic. I had to reevaluate and adjust that. My expectation to accurately draw something, to create a piece that looks accurate to what my photo reference is and the person that I'm drawing, I don't think it's unreasonable for me to ask that of myself at this stage in my career and my capacities. And so it is reasonable for me to be frustrated with myself to a certain level if I'm not getting it correct. But I can't treat it as like, you're an idiot. What's the matter with you? You're terrible. I need to treat it as like, okay, I'm not getting this. What can I do to help myself? And I got to take a step back, calm down, and just approach the process with a little bit of grace and an attitude that is healthy towards growing, right? So I hope this has been useful for you, and I hope that you're even better at managing your frustrations than I am. And if you are, send me a message, comment, and let me know what I'm doing wrong and what I could do better. Or maybe you've got some great resources about that you've read about this stuff. It's not something that I've done a lot of reading on, and maybe that's an area that I need to sort of start delving into, is reading more about the artistic journey. Because I know there's a lot of people that have been down this road, and a lot wiser people than I, that could probably lend some information and some wisdom to me. So yeah, I hope this wasn't too long of a video, and I hope you enjoyed watching the process, and I hope you like the finished piece. and let me know what you think of this video. I like doing longer format pieces, like videos like this, where I get to talk a little bit about things that are important in relationship to art, not necessarily just about the process. So I'd like you to let me know if you think this is worthwhile. I'll maybe try to do some more like this and create more value for you guys. So thanks very much. If you are not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get all the updates of my work. And if you could also consider telling someone else about Patreon, that'd be really awesome. I'm trying to grow that. And of course, you know where to find my prints at my Etsy store, just etsy.com/Corey Lansdell. And I'm really grateful for my patrons. They're the best. You guys are awesome. So thanks very much, everybody. And until next time, I will catch you later.